Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Emily Price,
This is Father Anthony.
and we both work at Clearwater, and we're excited to be starting up 10 Talks again this year.
Woohoo!
Yay! Just so you know, the idea of the 10 Talks is that we provide bite-sized pieces of formation on a regular basis, and they are consumable. Doesn't take long.
Yeah, a variety of topics that you can just plug into whenever you want to learn a little bit of something on the faith, and that applies to your daily life.
Mm-hmm. We also try to make them very practical with families in mind.
That's right.
So this year, Clearwater has taken on a collection of virtues, and we always take on something to work on throughout the year. And this year, we've chosen reverence, awe, and wonder. And not just reverence, awe, and wonder, but reverence, awe, and wonder as they apply to our relationship with God, our neighbor, and ourself.
Don't you feel like sometimes we get stuck in life? Like maybe life can be tiring, be a little bit of a drag. You can feel like you're just making it through and surviving rather than thriving on life.
Mm-hmm.
So we were thinking about what it means to change your perspective and look up to God, look up to heaven, what's truly important, and also to let God look at you. I remember reading a story of a great saint and friend of mine, Padre Pio Pietrelcina. And the story goes that at one moment there was a little boy in a town in Italy whose name was Giovannino, little Johnny, who unfortunately was born with a hunchback. And he was so hunched that literally as he tried to move, his chin would hit the ground. So sort of dragging his body and flailing. And his mom was pretty mad at God and pretty mad at life that her son was born this way. So she would keep him hidden in the house. And one day, little Johnny's like, I just need to go outside. Mom, can I go outside? And she said something sort of cruel. She was like, go outside. Maybe God will see you. So little Johnny goes outside and he's walking through the fields. He's trying to breathe in the air, even though he's sort of dragging his face to the ground. And all of a sudden, he feels the presence of a hand on his shoulder like this. And it's a bloody hand. And it's Padre Pio who sort of appears, touches him, and Johnny shoots straight up like a bolt. And he runs back to the house and he starts pounding on the door because it was locked. And his mom opens the door and doesn't even recognize her own son because he'd never stood up straight before. How fascinating that God heard the prayer of this little boy because he saw him. So we need to put ourselves before the gaze of God and let him see us for who we are.
Good story, Father. Good story.
Thanks.
So first on our list is, how do we show reverence, awe, and wonder towards God? And the quote that we've chosen for this year, for this specific area, is 1 Peter 3:15. Revere Christ as Lord in your hearts. Always be prepared to offer an explanation to anyone who asks you to justify the hope that is in you. However, do so with gentleness and respect.
What a beautiful quote.
I love that. And I love that it starts in the heart, and that is where everything needs to begin.
So what does it look like practically, Emily? How do we create that space in the heart?
Wow, I'm so glad you asked, Father.
Yes.
So something very simple that you can do in your own home is set up a prayer corner so that there is a very specific spot dedicated to the Lord in your home. And that visual reminder then becomes an internal reminder.
That's right. You know, it's something so simple, just to conceptualize it, giving God access to our heart. You think, well, God, of course, knows us, loves us. He's always here, he's always present. But we hold our hearts almost like a treasure that has a door that has to be opened. So we have to give God that access. I just had the privilege of doing a beautiful wedding in San Francisco a few days ago. And the young man, now the groom, the night before the wedding, reminded me that at some point in our journey together, he said, Father, you gave me this advice that despite all of my goals and objectives in life and my successes in work, I needed to make space for God. And he said, when I finally did that, very deliberately, shortly after he met his now wife. When we give God access, he has room to bless us in very particular ways in our life.
And it can be quick. I think a lot of times we underestimate the power of just a second where you can raise your awareness to God and remember that you have a God, that he is God, and that he is God of your life, and then giving him access to your heart and to your life, letting him do what he wants, and just that simple thinking of him and reminding yourself that he is there.
And then going from God to our neighbor, just like Christ mentioned, the golden rule is, or rather the commandments are summed up in loving God and loving your neighbor. The next place where we show reverence, awe, and wonder is to the others who are around us, who live around us. Maybe you remember that song that we would sing in catechism, that they will know that we are Christians by the way we love. So this is the next area of reverence, awe, and wonder towards our neighbor.
And I have a fun story of this. I direct a summer camp for youth called Captivenia, and it's for girls. And one of my team members this year told me that one of the girls, one of the participants who came up to her and asked her, she's like, "Why is everyone so loving here?" And I mean, all of us are just kind of doing what we normally do, which is treating people with dignity and respect the way that they deserve. But I think that speaks to something that when there is a community of authentic love, people notice, because that isn't common in the rest of the world.
And that's exactly what happened with that first Christian community. They were known to be of Christ by the way they loved. So practical takeaways, it's the way we show charity. It's what we call, in our spirituality, we call it benedicencia, how to speak well of others. We can look for ways in which we can pull out those truths of beauty of the people around us and encourage them, and support the people in our lives by showing those great qualities that impress us or that better our own lives, right?
And then moving on from showing reverence, awe, and wonder to our neighbor, we move to ourselves, because we are temples of the Holy Spirit. The living God, the triune God, dwells within us, and that means something.
And sometimes that's like the hardest place to show reverence, awe, and wonder, is how we treat ourselves. We might go to one extreme or the other. The sort of poor extreme of that unhealthy self-talk of getting discouraged or feeling sort of lost in our wounds, our weaknesses, our brokenness, or the whole other extreme where we might, be a little bit too overconfident or forget to rely on God and refer our gifts from the giver of the gifts, who's God. So it's sort of a way to find the proper place where we stand in the truth of who we are. God made us as a gift. We are temples of the Lord, and we are made to bless other people's lives. So we have to care for that temple.
And I think as a practical way to grow in that reverence, awe, and wonder of oneself is to stand in the truth, pick a Bible verse, a Bible verse, pick a Bible verse that directly contradicts something in your self-talk that needs to be corrected. Pick a word from the Bible and memorize it, and then use that every time that word, those thoughts, whether they be negative or overly positive, use that verse to ground yourself in the truth.
Well, thanks, Emily. So in summary, reverence, awe, and wonder to God, toward our neighbor, and toward ourselves changes our perspective on life. We raise our eyes to God, but then we see our neighbor and see ourselves differently under his gaze.
Agreed. Thanks for joining us, and make sure you come back.